We talked to Ernie McBride, Naval Intelligence here, and he told us that we'd have to call the Navy and get permission to get in. Well, I did that 3 weeks ago and never heard back from them, even though I called the Navy about 15 times. So remember that. Your government, which pretty much at the top level is selling out, thinks there's no problem with the communist Chinese that treat their people like slaves, are gaining our strategic military bases and ports all over this country. But the people on the ground that are actually in the military and are guarding and protecting this place, they think it's terrible because they've got some common sense, because they haven't been paid off like your president has. Again, we have been denied access to this facility. Why is there this obsession in our federal government with weakening our Constitution? Why do these lackeys from Harvard and Yale and other places dislike America so much and are so willing to weaken America so their friends in Europe can control the world? Because that's what it's all about. Make no mistake, this is about weakening America so that the Eastern establishment, which is allied with the European empire, can continue to flourish. This is real politics, not what you're taught by the mainstream media, which are nothing but propaganda bureaus of the corrupt establishment.
I'll get in trouble if I talk anything.
Really? I know, that's understandable.
They tell us not to say anything.
They do?
Yeah.
So you're not supposed to talk about how the Chinese are fighting tooth and nail to get our only deepwater port on the western side of the United States?
We can't say anything.
Well, thank you for at least being a patriot and saying that you don't like it. Thanks a lot. We can show you from outside the base, across the small bay, but it's still hard for you to understand and for us to understand the enormity of this port complex and shipyards that's just being handed over, again, to the communist dictatorship in China. Take a look. Endless. As far as the eye could see, with conning towers and deepwater ports and shipyards and big oil tank facilities for refueling, they've got it all. Ports are power. Wars have been fought over ports, and we're just giving them to them. It's insanity. That's not really insanity. We're being sold out. Our politicians don't care about America. They've been taught the international language of trade. Sell your country out. I'll assure you China and Germany and Japan and England aren't selling out their ports, their military shipyards. This is very dangerous. This is a strategic point in the United States of America.
We left San Diego, but we're not done exposing what's going on with the communist Chinese here inside our nation. In fact, communist is too kind a word for them, that pseudo-political term, that excuse for slavery. It's just called a slave system. And on our way to the high desert to expose what's going on at George Air Force Base, Costco trucks. Yes, we saw no less than 3 Costco trucks bringing in slave goods from the ports on our western seaboard. Well, you're fixing to see George Air Force Base. You're fixing to see Adelanto in Victorville, California, where they're moving in, where they're building 20 mini-malls for slave goods. We're going to talk to the city manager of Adelanto. We're also going to visit these mini-malls. And then we're going to give you a brief intelligence report about exactly what the entire scope is and what the plans are and who the Communist Chinese are working for.
We're now here in Southern California at a little town called Victorville, where George Air Force Base is located. The Chinese have been attempting to acquire the Air Force Base, and we're told may still acquire it. But that's not going to stop them bringing in their slave goods from their over 30 million political dissidents and slave labor camps. Right here, this is the first, we're told by the workers, of 20 such wholesale markets where slave goods will be brought into the U.S. and sold at discount prices to retailers. So here you have it. No more middleman for the Chinese military-industrial complex to sell slave goods. They're actually buying up the land, and this, again, is the first of 20 such facilities to be built. Now we're fixing to go down to the courthouse and get the actual records.
Listen carefully to this interview with Mr. Sakamoto, the city manager of Adelanto, and get his point of view on trade and human rights.
So the town's kind of taken a hit since the base
Very
closure.
bad. Yeah, our unemployment last month was 15.5%.
Can you tell us any details? And I see behind you in y'all's local newspaper, it says massive trade center breaks ground.
And they had purchased a piece of property in Adelanto and proposed the development of 1 million square feet of import-export center type operations to be built here in the community. The project was approved by the Planning Commission and then subsequently approved by the City Council, strictly around building and zoning type requirements. And since that time, they've gone forward trying to put their project together.
A question about, you said that it's bringing jobs to the area, to this group of small towns here in the George Air Force Base that's been shut down. When was George Air Force Base closed?
1992, December.
1992. That was when all that big base closure stuff came through?
Correct.
You're saying that it will bring jobs. How can American business and workers compete with Chinese slave labor goods?
Well, this portion of the business is going to be the retail portion. They're not going to do any manufacturing here.
I understand that, but the question is, and Amnesty International and many others have categorized this, and we know that in human history, we're not saying it's just China. In human history, near slavery or slavery has pretty much been the way a lot of societies have operated, and some estimates are as high as 30 million political dissidents in slave labor camps in China. And there's the human rights issue, and then on top of it, there's the issue of this isn't even free trade. This is absolute slave labor controlled by the military in China. And the fear is that already, we're not singling y'all out, Walmart, Kmart, Target, every other shopping mall is buying these goods, and they're just middlemen. Doesn't it seem like China's trying to take out the middlemen?
I don't know. I leave the State Department and foreign trade to the federal government because that's their purview and not ours. Well, you were asking a question, and I think your question's well taken in terms of the issue of the human rights abuses that are allegedly taking place in China. I haven't seen them, so I can't speak to them directly. I know our central government, our foreign affairs departments have indicated through any number of their statements that are made that they're likely or just as likely concerned as we are in the city of Adelanto for those types of abuses that are taking place there. From our perspective as a city, with virtually 30% of the people in our community on public assistance, my job is to try to provide as many jobs for them as I can possibly provide. The stream of products that's coming here from companies like Nike, Hewlett-Packard, IBM, all of whom have businesses in China now and are producing products in China and bringing them back here to the United States to market them. It's really difficult for a community the size of Adelanto to make a determination as to the difference. You make a good point in terms of cutting out a middleman someplace, and is that proper or is that advantageous? I don't know. It's a real difficult call because obviously the corporate giants at IBM, Hewlett-Packard, General Electric, all of them who are in mainland China now with factories that are producing goods, are hopefully producing a product where they're paying a good wage to the people who are there and making sure that the people who are working there are receiving the best kind of care that they can. But nonetheless, products are consistently coming from China. I mean, you said it yourself. You can't go to Kmart, Walmart, Target. You can't go to any of those stores without tipping a box upside down and seeing that the product is made in China. I spoke to a Chinese businessman recently who came to visit here, and his statement to me was very simple. His statement was, I would like to pay my people more money. I would like to pay a decent wage. But when the American companies offer me only 5 or 6% of what they're selling the product for here in the United States, they make it very difficult for me to pay a salary that's competitive. I would like to pay a competitive salary, but as long as the American companies are only willing to pay me 4 cents on the dollar for a product, it becomes impossible for me.